So Shannon, go ahead and take us away.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Today is Thursday, June 3rd. It's 5 p.m. and we are calling to order the SRO committee meeting for tonight. Did everybody get a chance? We had an agenda review. Did everybody get a chance on the committee to review that agenda? If you could just give me a thumbs up, that would be great. Looks like all committee members have. Okay, wonderful. And then the minutes were sent out. So I'd like approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was May 27th. If I could get a motion for that. Just a thumbs up. Thank you, Mike. And can I get a second motion for that? Thank you, Sarah. Okay. So we will call to the Emma, do you want to go over anything before I go into the visitor public comment?
Yes, I have a couple of just admin updates, and also I neglected to ask if anyone on the committee can take notes tonight. Leah, you're a rock star. Great. And when anytime you're speaking, Leah, in particular, don't worry, I will capture what you're saying so that you don't have to worry about taking your own notes. And per usual, I've got your back with anything missed. Okay, thank you, Leah. Sorry to do that. Forgot to do that before 5. The quick admin updates for folks both on committee and the community members joining us. If someone can admit folks while I'm just speaking, that would be awesome. One of my co-hosts. So just a clarification, I misspoke. I misunderstood what the posting information was for the Maple Run School District. So the report that this committee will be drafting after tonight's meeting will be posted on June 16th when the school board convenes. That is per the school board chair's direction to me. So I misspoke last time. We will not post it on the 11th. It will be sent to the school board on the 11th, and it will be posted on the committee's website when the school board convenes on June 16th. The second thing I wanted to mention is that there are additional versions of proposals, again, emphasis on draft and in pencil, posted for tonight's consideration and meeting, in addition to what we considered last week. Those are both of those items are under the committee's website in the agenda minutes folder. So you can look there for those drafts. And the final thing is a request to both committee members and folks joining us tonight. We'd love to minimize distractions. So sometimes people use backgrounds in their Zoom functions. So just to help folks focus on the discussion, if you can minimize changing your backgrounds during the meeting. And a reminder, if that is distracting for any individual, you can always use the speaker mode in Zoom, which will spotlight the screen for the person speaking. And that will minimize having to look at the Hollywood Squares version of the screen. And that could just be helpful for folks who have visual distraction things. And with that, Shannon, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so we are, anyone that would like from the community that would like to speak tonight, if you could put your name in the chat function, and then I'll have a list of that, and we'll call on those folks, and they'll have 2 minutes to speak. We ask that all visitors excuse me, in the Zoom room have their full name and display or a preloaded picture. And then if you do not have a preloaded picture, just to come on camera so that we can just know that it's an actual real person and that not just somebody else. And then we will ask everybody to follow the guidelines and acknowledge them and understand before they speak. And I have, first person is Ryer Erickson. And Ryer, if will you agree to follow the guidelines and acknowledge and understand and speak to them before speaking?
Yes.
Okay.
So I want to start by thanking all the committee members for their commitment to the work you've done. I want to thank Emma Mulvaney-Stanek for the work she's done in kind of brokering conversations and making sure everyone's on the same page, at least in terms of rules and how everything happens. I have no doubt that many of you have disagreed with things I've said, points I've made over the past few months. So I want to thank you all for at least giving me the chance to make those points. I want to remind this committee that harm has been done by the SRO program in the past. And I want to remind this committee that there is no doubt that harm continues to be done by this program. A vote to continue the SRO program in its current form will in fact be a vote to harm children. That is a fact, it's undisputable. I ask the committee to remember that we are looking at impact and not intent. There is no doubt the intent of the SRO program is one of good, but the impact of the SRO program is one of harm for many students. I also want to point out to the committee that the next time a child is hurt, and there is no doubt there will be a next time, members of this committee will have to contend with their responsibility in that harm. Please remember the children who didn't feel safe with police in their schools, who said that in your surveys. Ask yourselves, how many children are you okay with feeling alienated in their schools? 1, 10, a dozen, 100? For me, 1 student is too many to feel scared to go to school by a program that we have instituted and is easily taken out and has absolutely no verifiable benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryer. I have Angie Sturm next. And Angie, do you agree to follow the guidelines and acknowledge and understand and speak to them before speaking?
I do.
Thank you.
Hi, I want to thank everyone for their hard work. You, in a way, you did all the hard work that I would have done, but when I applied to this committee, I made it clear that I was starting from a place of equity, and that was not an acceptable place to start to be on this committee. But today I urge you, committee members, to begin with equity. We're not asking the question, should we be equitable in keeping an SRO or not? It's what is the equitable thing? And I believe that the data and also many perspectives that have been shared show that it is equitable to remove the SRO from the school. Otherwise, there's really, it goes back to Ryer's question, which I will echo. How many people can we ignore when we're considering issues of equity? How many people of color, how many people with disabilities can we say is just sort of collateral damage when we have a program that we know harms them disproportionately? So please bear these things in mind as you continue to make your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. John and Emma, that's all I have in the chat function for myself. Do you have anything, anyone in yours?
Nothing on my end, John.
Nothing on my end. I apologize, guys. I'm having some crazy internet issues here. I'm trying to fix it so I can participate more fully here.
Okay, no worries. If anyone did message John, just feel free to message myself or Shannon. We'll just give a quick second in case that technology. Darn technology. Okay. I'm not seeing any more on my end. Shannon?
Nope, none on my end. Okay.
Okay.
With that, we'll close the public comment for this evening, and I will turn it over to Emma for the rest.
Great. Thanks, Shannon. All right. So as is sort of like the ongoing joke, here's my quick panic of screen share moment. I'm going to just bring us back to where we left off last time, everyone. And all right, someone just give me a thumbs up that you actually can see that. And I'm sharing the right thing. It's June 3rd. Okay, thank God. Okay. All right, moving on. So I would like to just do a quick reminder to committee members, and certainly if we have questions from the community as we get going into our final meeting here, just where we both started as well as our group agreements, because last meeting we came a little bit too close to the line in terms of group agreements. So I wanted just to share three main ideas that come out of our ways of being with each other. And that is just to remind folks on the committee that we can disagree with each other's ideas, but not as people, not as people show up on this planet together. We also, if you are referring to other people's positions, either on the committee or who have provided public comment, please refrain from characterizing those comments in any way, shape, or form. People are entitled to their ideas and opinions. You can disagree with an idea, but do not characterize them, and especially in a negative light. And finally, while we are going to talk a little bit about our process shifting tonight in terms of the type of decision-making process we'll use, I still encourage everyone to listen to understand, not to necessarily disagree or to prove your point or prove someone how wrong they are, but to go back to being really curious and listening to understand people's positions. That's where the best decisions are made, is when we can really get to a place of agreement and not be entrenched in our personal views and opinions on matters. All right, and a quick reminder about the committee's charge to you back in December, if you can think back that far, December of 2020. This is a summarized version of it with a clarification point. It is on the committee's website. It's also a document that the district provided to us back in December. And so within that charge, the board asked this committee to develop a well-supported and fact-based recommendation. There's probably an S on the end of that. There'll probably be recommendations, but to remember that we're trying to really be well-supported and fact-based, not just on opinion. That you were asked to examine ways that the program can accommodate as much as possible the concerns of all parties. So all parties that have raised concerns throughout this process need to be included in the recommendations and deliberations. This one I want to clarify because I got clarification from the school board chair. The charge statement was written with the goal is to have consensus on the committee's recommendations. The goal was like our objective was sort of written in a way that says and use the word consensus. So further clarification was the board did not intend for us to use the consensus decision-making model, but instead asked or clarified the majority will decide, and they hope that the minority can consent or live with what the majority decides if we have to come to that point where we don't have unanimous agreement, which is fine, but really emphasize they want the committee to work towards as much agreement as possible. And finally, the questions, of course, which you're familiar with at this point, that I believe there are 4 or 5 questions. What are the role and responsibilities and duties? Should the SRO do? What are the necessary duties for that position? Are they being performed in the way that the committee likes, and what should happen now? And also who else can do those duties? Those are just paraphrased versions of the charge. All right. So with that in mind, and with what I said before, with clarification on what the board meant by consensus, I communicated with our co-chairs, and we agreed that not only does, as we know, as I explained last meeting, the true consensus modeling and decision making is a very time-intensive activity. It's a great one in terms of building, unity and whatnot, but it is a very long, drawn-out process when done well and properly. So since we're not required to use consensus, and we got that clarity, the co-chairs and I discussed how there's different majority decision-making models out there. There's the simple majority, which a lot of folks are familiar with, which is simply 50% plus 1. But there's another model which is used in a lot of public bodies where a 2/3 majority is used. That's often when you try to get as much agreement as possible when you change your rules or you adopt bylaws, sometimes that kind of stuff. So this is a different model than just 50% plus 1. So if we were thinking this would be a good decision-making model to use tonight, that we would, when we take votes, that we would do a 2/3 majority, which would mean 8 out of the 11 of you would have to agree to something before it would be a recommendation put forward. And if we couldn't reach that threshold, then it would be not part of the recommendations. The other 2 thoughts would be that we would document, which we would anyway, the conversation and certainly the concerns raised, so that minority viewpoints were still included in a documented way to the board. And then the third idea would be to allow anyone who's dissenting, does not agree with the 2/3 majority on the committee, to allow that person or persons to write something from in their own words to be included as sort of an addendum to the board report. So I'm going to stop share for just a second here and see, we wanted to really put that to the committee since we're changing the process on you to how to make decisions, and see what people think about that. Shannon and John, did I capture what we had talked about accurately enough? Okay. So any thoughts or reactions to that, changing that decision process and using 2/3, allowing as the threshold to make a decision, a yes decision, as well as allowing any committee member who chose to write a dissenting opinion to be given to the board? Any thoughts, reactions? And or questions or clarifications? Okay. So I would like to just see if people, oh, yep, Alexis, yep.
So Emma, all three of those are options for the seat.
We
Am
could
I
do,
understanding that
yep,
correctly? So if we're not able to reach the 2/3 majority, then we would follow the other two steps. Am I understanding that correctly?
well, it's actually meant to sort of be it could be a package, and you also could simply just do the 2/3 majority and not allow someone to write a dissent opinion. That sounds like very Supreme Court justice, but like a disagreement, basically to make sure that they felt adequately represented. So the 2/3 piece is the most pertinent and important piece for us to get agreement on. That would be, you would need 8 votes, yes, to put something in the recommendations essentially. So that is the biggest piece I would like to get agreement on, if people feel okay with that. Or we can go back to a different model, which would probably just default to the simple majority decision-making model. Is that helpful? So people could also say, like, we don't want to allow dissenting opinions. You could also say we don't want to document all the concerns. We just want to capture recommendations. Those are different variations that certainly would be something you all could consider.
That's helpful. I guess my question is, given that it's our last meeting, worst case scenario, if we were not able to reach 2/3 majority, what would the next step be?
Well, if we're at that point by 6:30, I'm going to pivot us to a place where what would we like to summarize for the board at that point? Because it is possible, given all the time you've had, and the board has said, as I understand it, this is the end of the road for this committee. That if this is a complicated topic, so if we cannot come to a 2/3 agreement, we can by 6:30. We can revisit the decision-making process and see if people feel comfortable switching to a simple majority, for example, or switching gears and saying we cannot come up with an agreement. We cannot come to a recommendation, and here's why. And I would ask you all to help me summarize what those are. So that could be the recommendation to the board, that for whatever reason, more information is needed, whatever it might be. But we would make that pivot around 6:30, so we would have enough time to come to that conclusion.
Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
always. Thanks for asking. Any other questions before I ask you to give me a thumbs up or down or sideways on that new decision-making process? And you're gonna get your thumbs ready or your Zoom hands ready today, because we're gonna really use those today. All right. So are folks comfortable? Are you is supportive of switching to a 2/3 majority decision-making process? The thing on the 3 points on that slide, I'll put it back up, which is see, 2/3 majority to make a recommendation to advance to the board, documentation of the conversation to include the concerns raised, and then allowing a dissenting opinion or opinions if there's more than one person on the committee who would like to write something in their own words. So with that, I'm just going to look for thumbs up if you agree, sideways if you just have more questions, thumbs down if you want to vote no on using this process. Okay, just looking at committee members here. So thumbs up if you're in agreement, or good old Zoom thumbs up. Okay, I think I see everyone. Great. Okay. All right. So that is the process we will use tonight. All right. And we will, I'm planning to bring us through rounds of that as well. So we'll do straw polling, and then I'll try to make it clear when we're making a final. But I think a lot of this is we have to kind of stack. There's lots of pieces here. So we're going to try to stack, and we'll take one final vote. And I'm going to try my best on these slides to navigate that and make sure everyone's clear what the final set of pieces are. So bear with me as we try to do this in real time. Okay. All right. So with that, I'd want to actually, let me stop. Hold on a sec. All right, before we do that, I just want to remind us where we landed on, or tried to land on May 27th. We didn't land the plane on the 27th. We all know that. And that's why we needed this additional meeting. But at the last meeting, we had talked about 3 different proposals. To quickly summarize them, it's available again on the website. Proposal 1, in no particular order, was to make no significant changes to the SRO program. The second was to modify the program in significant ways. And the third was to end the program and reassign the duties to other staff who are not SROs or other entities to get the work done. And we started polling on those ideas to see where the committee was at, and people shared some additional thoughts and additional pieces that were brought in from all the different pieces of data points and interviews and information you've gathered. Most folks started to sort of gravitate towards some version of proposal 2 at the time. And I did my best to sort of capture some of those pieces that were repeated a few times in agreement, but we also had folks who had reservations and/or we were using consensus at the time, blocked moving forward with just going forward with proposal 2 and working on that. So we left off on that that place, and what I wanted to first start with was just a few minutes on reopening that discussion to see if folks wanted to say more on those 3 proposals or had additional thoughts before we go into some additional variations that I offered for you tonight to kind of create additional buckets to be considered. So I just wanted to open up if folks had other general reactions and thoughts since the last meeting based on where we left off before we jump right into some potential other ways to think about this. So let's open the floor. Okay. You're all just ready to jump into the next ones. Okay, so what I'm going to offer then, I'm going to offer just a quick scoping of the 3 additional ideas. 2 of them are new ideas, and the third is a variation of that proposal 2. This does not mean that what we talked about last time are completely off the table. You're more than welcome to bring ideas in from those first 3 proposals from May 27th. So for the sake of just helping to organize people's thoughts, I'm going to go right back to that those options. And these are numbered in such a way just to kind of give a separate number to things. Oops, hold on a second. So this is labeled number 4 only because we left off on 3 before. So this one, I also grouped these items as proposal number 4 that actually have nothing directly related to the SRO program redesign or ending or continuing it, to really try to put student support services and student-oriented pieces, ideas into one place in case there was agreement that, yes, all these pieces should advance, because it created a bucket that was just student-oriented, and then we could do another bucket that's specific to the SRO program. So this may or may not work this way, but proposal 4, because of course, remember, you can take pieces of proposals and put them together. I'm imagining we're gonna probably do that. It's a little bit Frankenstein a little bit, but I imagine there'll be, I like a little bit of 4, I like a little bit of 5, I like a little bit of whatever, and bring it together. So proposal 4 here was an attempt to capture the idea of assigning and adequately resourcing duties to support the students by other staff who are mental health professionals, restorative justice staff, social workers, home liaisons. So to really kind of make that piece of a recommendation that people with that kind of expertise are adequately resourced for what students are needing today as of 2021, 2022 in St. Albans and Fairfield. The second idea here was to do further examination of the impact of the SRO program. This is the deeper dive that came in a few of the small group recommendations, specifically on how the SRO program impacts Black, Indigenous, and people of color, LGBTQIA+ folks, gender expansive folks, differently abled people, etc., to help inform a more of a redesign. I think we acknowledged that there were some gaps in our ability to reach folks beyond the survey, and so that was an attempt to kind of be able to make a recommendation that should be more work done in that area. The third was to do an analysis of the students' needs in the district so that there was more data, information useful for really defining what do students need today around mental health and behavior needs. And because I didn't know where else to add it, I added the add more therapy dogs idea here. Because anyone can, there are multiple professionals who can have a therapy dog, so that was an idea I wanted to at least find a home. So that's proposal 4. Proposal 5 is an idea that was starting to float a little bit last time, but here's a bucket in and of itself, and very specifically getting clearer what this liaison idea was from last time. And Kathy, I know you had brought this up a little bit, so if there's points of clarity, please feel free to weigh in here, but this is an attempt to create a bucket on this idea. So proposal 5 would be just to be clear, replace the existing SRO program with a law enforcement liaison program. This is different than homeschool liaisons or home liaisons, which is a different role. So this would be a role change. The role of SRO would change to a law enforcement liaison. The duties would be defined by the critical aspects that are needed between the district and the police department that relate to safety and the law. This would be limited to public safety, physical campus safety, security, law enforcement, activities. And to pull in the idea about increasing and improving communication, that would be a piece of this as well, that there be more communication, more transparency on what this liaison program is to current students and families and staff. I did not want to go too much further down this rabbit hole, if you will, or this whole new program redesign and get into other things. But this other things that should be considered, of course, would be where would this position or positions be located? Would these individuals be armed or disarmed? What about the uniform idea? Who's the oversight, etc. But that I just wanted to create a bucket that this is another alternative, which other districts do use, but this would be proposal 5. Proposal 6, just bear with me, is a revamp of proposal 2. So this is the change in the existing program. And there is a rhyme to my crazy, beautiful mind, color coding situation here. So I went back over the meeting, went back over what people had said on the committee, and I tried to just note where people started to show a little bit of agreement. We did not talk about all the bullets here. So this is basically what proposal 2 had, with a couple of ideas added to it. The blue highlighted ideas were where more than one person said, yes, I like this piece of it. The yellow, there was disagreement. Some liked it, some didn't like it. And the pink there were some questions around whether that idea, this is the funding piece, was outside the scope of the committee to make a recommendation on. And just to clarify, anything that doesn't have a color on it right now is something that we didn't get into the specifics on. People didn't specifically comment. Okay, so with that, I want to stop share and come back as a group and see. I'm going to do the same thing we did before. I want to do a first pass with everyone to see what new ideas these 3 additional proposals generated. If you're still where you were last time, that's fine. If you could just sort of articulate that, and then do a go through and see where we might be landing, and then come back to straw polling when we're ready. But I see Kathy's hand first. I'm going to go with you, Kathy, and this is also a fine time to ask questions and clarifications. Kathy.
I just wanted to make the point that I had suggested the first 2 bullet points on the liaison idea. And, just because it had come up, but there was really no specific proposal kind of related to it. I do appreciate, I thought that the first 3 were a great jumping off point for last meeting. But I'm really glad to see that there's a lot more specificity around some other options on the table that I think might be really solid to consider. But I guess what I was saying specifically about the liaison issue is, in doing some research after I sent that to you, I think that we have to be clear about, what a police liaison program is. And I saw in some places that some people have SRO programs in which they're pretty much called liaisons. So I just wanted there not to be any, I just wanted there to be clarity around what we're talking about, around that, being specific about the terms that we're using. So,
Kathy, do you have anything for us to jump off on about what you might suggest? I'm not going to hold you to it, but like, what is a jumping off point that would be a clear definition for the committee to maybe chew on for a law enforcement liaison?
I would need to think about that. I hadn't thought about it in terms of an actual definition. I was just thinking that we hadn't really defined it. It was brought up, but we hadn't necessarily really defined it. And yeah, so that's a good question. Let me think.
Okay, sorry. Happy to come back to you. And it could also be, part of one way to get there is defining the duties that the position has. As much as it is a title, it's about also what the duties are that the committee would recommend.
And I think that's part of it too, is that there was a part of me that was feeling like we were putting the cart before the horse in a sense by saying, is this good? Is this bad? Is this what we want? But I don't know that we've really examined, I don't know that I don't know if we've really weighed in on the individual duties as opposed to, the overall question of which bucket are you in? So I'd appreciate doing that a little bit tonight too.
Yes, and we will definitely get to duties, but the question first at hand is, where is the committee in terms of the bucket, right? So are we, because if the committee tonight was at a place where they didn't want to make any changes at all, That's one thing. Or they wanted to completely end the program. That's another. And it's sort of a moot point to be talking about duties. So that's why I'm trying to get us first is what bucket are we actually talking about? And now that we have a clearer
That makes sense.
decision-making process, right? So
Mhm.
that's part of
Yeah.
my pass here is, you know, what if anything new out of these 3 new proposals speaks to you, as well as kind of what bucket or proposal are you leaning towards, so we can get like that straw poll pass in this first go around. So Kathy, with that, do you want to, and it could be more than one proposal, and we did this a little bit last time. So Kathy, with that last piece of it, do you want to weigh in on which ones seem to be standing out to you? Knowing that the details can still be, you know, moved around a little bit, but just in terms of the bucket ideas.
I like a lot of what's under number 4. It doesn't really, I mean, aside from the fact that it doesn't necessarily address the SRO program specifically. One of the things when I was going back and I was putting together the minutes from last meeting was a lot of the recommendations that were coming from the equity committee. And the one that really stood out to me was the need to, I even have right here, a larger discussion that needs to happen in terms of what our schools need and how to address those priorities. We have limited resources and a plethora of concerns. Let's make the best case for what addresses those concerns. So I thought that was a really good approach. It's not, I think it might be outside the scope of what we were tasked with doing. So I think it ties in with this idea of doing the further examination and looking at an analysis of the student needs of the district. So I thought that was important. So right now, that's what I'm looking at.
Great. Thanks for going first, Kathy, and for the clarifications. Okay. Who would like to go next? And then what I'm going to do is going to give you like a little who's on first thing again, just so we can move through the committee. I'm going to ask everyone to speak if possible, and you can pass and get to the back of the line if you want, but we can't do that too many times. So is anyone willing to go next? And then I'll pick who will be on deck. John, great. So John's going to go next, and then I'm going to just on my slides here. Shannon, you're going to be on deck if that's okay. Okay, go ahead, John.
Oh, I just learned there's a tree down on my street that has disrupted our internet. So hopefully I'm hearable.
We can hear you.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. I'm in a place where I could start to get behind proposal number 5, the law enforcement liaison format. For me, that does 2 key things. Number 1, at least it looks like under this outline format, it looks like it would, it would remove, any unintended negative impact of the current SRO program, which is critical for me. And then number 2, however, I think it also is a really good, it has the potential to maintain immediately some of the critical positive aspects of the program. I'm speaking of security aspects, and it potentially, depending upon how that liaison relationship is negotiated and is formatted, you could potentially there have a conduit for students who have received mentorship from the current SROs, potentially to maintain that positive relationship if they want to, but it's not one that's not one that's inadvertently imposed on other students. So that framework I think could work from my perspective.
Thanks, John. Shannon, and then Martin, I'm going to have you on deck, if that's okay.
I'm leaning,
maybe.
I'm leaning towards option 6. Last meeting, I was looking at option number 2. I'd like to see some changes to the SRO program, and I think that we can make those changes where it benefits some of we can make some of the issues so that students are able to feel more safe. I think it's working across the lines. It's not just one-sided. It can't just come from, you know, the SROs in the schools, and that we need the community's input on it as well. And that's what we did on some of this, but working with groups where we can come up with the best outcome for all students. I think that there are a lot of positive benefits with the SRO program, and I understand that there are negative ones. I've seen those, I've heard those things as well. And by making a hybrid version or a modified version, that we would be able to help everyone. I think that the benefits of the SRO program, you know, some people have said that, you know, there is no benefit of it. But with John's meeting and my meeting with the SROs, it's very clear that there are students that probably would not even be here if it wasn't for the SROs, such as suicide, self-harming. So we can't discount those either. And those may be minority students. They may be students socially or economically impacted. And so we need to address those as well, look at that part of it as well. So for that reason, I'm leaning towards option number 6.
Thanks, Shannon. Martin, and then Alexis on deck.
I'd like to use the pass option for now.
Lucky Alexis. Okay, Alexis, you can also pass, of course, but we'll do Alexis and then Connor. Can I have you on deck?
I'm staying pretty consistent from last week. I could support option 5 and option 6. I do think it's important to point out in reading option number 4, the district has already done a lot of work and will continue to do work around assigning additional resources. We have added resources and positions to all buildings recently. And we have assessed and analyzed the student needs of the district from a mental health and a behavioral perspective. So I just wanted to point that out because I do think both of those things are very independent of the SRO program and should happen regardless of what happens with the SRO program. So I do think that that is a different group of individuals doing that type of work at the district level.
Thanks, Alexis. And it's always helpful to have staff on this committee because there's some real life, you know, information that many of us wouldn't have otherwise. So thank you for bringing that piece of important information forward, Alexis.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to derail the conversation, but if people find it pertinent, I am more than happy to share the resources and the positions that we have added and will be adding to the buildings, if that's appropriate down the road.
Great. Yeah, let's see where the conversation goes, but that's good to know. Great. Okay, so Connor, and then I'm going to have Mike on deck.
Sure. So I definitely support option number 4. Whether or not we officially recommend it, I think it's very important. I'm glad to hear that some work towards that is already being done. I'm kind of torn between options 5 and 6. I feel like they could both be beneficial if they're executed well. The only thing that would bias me against option 5 is that the committee has done a lot of work to get to option 6, and I feel that in the interest of time, since we only have about 50 minutes, it may not be wise to go with option 5.
Thanks, Connor. And I want to deflate your balloon, but we're going to try to go till 7. And if people need to sign off a little early, because I know you have an event tonight, for example, feel free because that's needed. But we will try to use that full time in order to get to a good place. So thanks, Connor. Okay, Mike, and then Bob's on deck.
All right, can you hear me okay, Emma? Just want to make sure. Okay, excellent.
Yep, DJ, we can hear you.
Hey now, that was kidding. I'm going between 5 and 6 as well. I think a lot of these are really close to being related. Like if I go down through some of these, I'm thinking you could, and again, I'm not married to this idea. I'm just throwing it out there. You know, reduce the SROs down to either a liaison program or maybe one full-time officer who has to, you know, not really patrol, but it'd be the caretaker for all 3 schools, not necessarily have to be at the school all day long either. I'm looking through some of these different duties, and I'm thinking a lot of these are just not needed for school. I don't know. I'm going to not say anything about the bullying protection program because I don't know enough about it. We didn't have the internet when I was in high school, so I can't really say much about that. But as far as like providing mentorship to youth and the LEAD program and teaching civics education at school, I'm not sure that's really necessary. So I'm thinking something scaled back to immediate threats or criminal investigations that truly require the presence of a police officer. Um, Obviously, security checks and safety checks around the school once in a while. And then also, if a student feels like they need to converse with an SR, or not an SRO, but just a police officer in general, that there's somebody they can go to that school and say, I'd like to talk with the liaison officer, and the liaison officer can simply show up to the school and speak with that student one-on-one. So it's not like we're taking police away from students should they need it. So I'm for like a modified version, like a 5 or 6 again, with some scaled back duties, and keep the police there for what they're truly for, which is the safety and security of the students. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Bob, and then I have Leah is on deck, if that's okay.
Okay. Couple of things. Option 6 has some changes. Changes necessarily bad. Some of the problems I have, we're looking at things that we haven't even researched. Reduce FTE of the SROs. We didn't even look at that. We don't know how many students, what the student SRO ratio is. There are other schools in Franklin County who have SROs, and from what I can see, I took what the school's population is and the SROs, and St. Albans has a much higher student to officer ratio. I'm for proactive policing. What I see a lot of here is reactive policing. And I think one of the hallmarks of the SRO and the DARE program, which I was involved with, was to get out and be proactive with the kids. Like there used to be something called community-oriented policing services, COPS. This is what the program is. And to say that, we should reduce the FTE, if I was a school board member and said, okay, what research have you done on that? We haven't done any. How can we really make a decision on that when we haven't done any research on that? I'm seeing some of the yellows here in the 6. I don't know for a fact about the LEAD program. I do know that most principals are happy to have officers come in and teach about drug education. There was something, I don't know if it's still there, it was called Act 51. It was mandated that there was drug education in the schools. This took it off the schools. All they had to do was say, hey, can you come down? Excuse me, come down and do this. And that was done. There's a few other things, as far as disarming and taking out a uniform, non-starters as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely not. There's something called, and I'm going to get a little technical here in police jargon, it's called use of force continuum. The highest level is deadly force. The lowest level is officer presence. You're taking away 2 of the tools of the officer, 2 important tools, a non-starter. So while, 6 is there and it can be some changes, in order to forge the relationship, the officer has to be on site. One of the things is you have to have that initial contact with the student if the student has a problem. Maybe the officer is that initial contact. I think I said that last week. You don't know who that initial contact is going to be. And if the officer is on site, it's someone else they can go to. So really, I'm not in favor of going places where we haven't even studied. Liaison program. Okay, we kind of know what it is. We heard about it in Burlington, but exactly what is it? How often does the officer go to the school? I don't want to have kids say, oh, must be a problem. Cops are here. That's what you're trying to get away from. You don't want the cops to be the bad guys. And, every time you see a police officer, oh, it must be a problem. That's what we're trying to get away from. So I'm actually leaning towards more number 1, to not have substantive changes, but yeah, we got to have some changes in there. But let's look into these things. And I really don't think we should be going forward with things that we haven't researched.
Thanks, Bob. Leah, and then we have Sarah on deck.
I think I'm also leaning towards 5 and 6. I think the liaison program would be closer to what we might need. I think it's really important to still have those connections with the police, though, because like you said, with all the students that are involved, but I think it would reduce a little bit of the stress on some of the students to maybe not have an officer present all the time. But I also want to reiterate the fact that I think that it is really important to inform people what they're there for. So if we were going to go with 5, I think we should have set guidelines on what they are there for and what they need. And I think that should go for any decision that we make to just inform the public more, especially the students in general.
Thanks, Leah. Sarah, and then George.
Hi, everyone. I guess for me, in terms of number 5 and the liaison program, I would just, I think, need much more clarity on what that is. I think the liaison could mean many different things. So I would just need clarification to go forward with thinking about that. I continue to kind of be in bucket 6. You know, I think that we do as schools have to have some form of relationship with law enforcement because there are issues related to law that occur at school. And so, you know, while saying that, I also feel that, and I think I said this last week or a couple weeks ago, you know, I do feel that there should be some further examination, like what's saying in 4 of the impact, and maybe done outside of this committee. Certainly want to hear people and take their experiences seriously. So you know, that's in 4, but I also feel like it potentially should be in every bucket. I am focusing on 6 because the online bullying protection program is something that I'm aware that the police department is currently putting a lot of effort in training. And this is something over the last 6 to 8 years that has definitely impacted the safety of students at school. So although we weren't, you know, we weren't going to school at the time of the internet, it's impacting kids every day. And the schools are needing, you know, there's an increase of expectation or responsibility by schools to be looking into online bullying, potential online bullying after hours. So it's a real thing, and I think, you know, if there are other avenues to explore that, I think schools would definitely want that as well. And the only concern I really have about 6, well, I mean, there's a few things that I would need more information about in terms of just, you know, disarming SROs. I don't know what the expectations are around that or what the mandates are around that. So I don't really know about that. You know, I think the plainclothes or the alternative uniforms could be a possibility. I like the pieces about aligning training, increasing and improving communication, the annual reporting, and the community involvement with the hiring process. Those are all things that I could support.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, George, and then Martin, and then I have a proposal for you to see if we can if we can pick a bucket. Okay, George?
Yep. Is that sound okay, Emma? Okay.
Yep, we can
All right.
hear you.
Thanks. Just trying to think back to last week when we kind of went through the options. I remember being kind of somewhere between the 1 to the 2, not really having the clarity in my mind of to what degree no substantive change meant, no change versus some change, and how that melded into number 2. Emma, as you were starting to delineate some new options for us, I reacted to number 5 and jotted down a couple notes where I thought number 5 was kind of the re-envisioning of 2, and then I heard you go on to say, well, 6 is kind of the re-envision 2. All right, so that's just my introduction to my thinking here. 4, I do kind of agree where a couple of comments have said that, wow, continuing to look at, I just got to find it again. Oh, sugar, where'd it go? There it is. The analysis with mental health, behavioral needs, and then to hear, I think it was Alexis saying, hey, some of that's actually out there, and that, I think that's good. I'm just listening to y'all and thinking, it does sound like there's some support and value recognized in that. And then to hear, wow, we may not know that, hey, the district's been out there doing some of that already. Sounds good. What I bucked out in terms of the bullets here that are there with number 4, it's actually not about the bullets that are there, it's about a bullet that's not there, which would be that there's still a fuller scope of duties. And I just wasn't sure. I mean, some of my conversations going back to like the history presentation and the work that Kathy, Bob, and I did was with the administrators thinking day-to-day security needs on kind of big scale stuff, where we're talking about, except for Fairfield, who's just a smaller footprint and smaller student body, we're talking about 3 campuses, City, SATEC, and BFA, where you're 700 to 1,000 kids. There's a lot to try to keep secure and all kind of safely aligned in the right direction so we can actually get some learning done. So I think the admin perspective there is relevant in terms of what it takes to be safe in bigger terms, more institutional type of terms. I saw that with number 5. I did kind of like where 5 was going, and yet I think there are some elements in 6 that I think almost like a re-envision of hybrid 5-6 is intriguing to me. 5 actually, in speaking to critical aspects of the relationship and the duties that have been getting filled by the SRO that do speak to overall safety, bigger picture stuff as well. I like that that's in 5, and I think that's huge. Some of the things Sarah was saying, I don't remember everyone she specified, but I do think there are some very positive points in 6, even into the inviting more inclusion in the hiring process, and even how information is shared back out to the communities. The mentorship, I understand it may not be something that is present for every child, or it may not be possible, but I know I am picturing kids in my mind who have gotten such key mentorship from these individuals that SATEC has had. In any case, that's my only experience there with the SRO program. I know that that's just true. It's complex again, certainly, and one of the things going through my mind, I don't want to think of it as kind of a, no pun intended, cop out here, but we are making recommendations. It falls to the board ultimately, and I think so long as we're doing due diligence with the thought process, we can make those recommendations. I appreciate that Bob said, you know, if we might recommend something that we didn't really investigate. Yep, that's a little bit odd, maybe, if we were to make such recommendations, although we could further recommend perhaps that we believe this is a decent recommendation, yet it should be investigated more completely. Because it's probably not going to be a one and done issue where we recommend, the board decides, and no one ever brings it up again. We you know, within Maple Run, it's going to stay on the plate, and you know, the community should be able to demand the highest sense of integrity, value, justice with that. So I would go between a 5 and a 6. Sorry.
Thanks, George. All right, Martin, bring us home, and then I have a couple proposals to float out there to see if we can start moving towards agreements.
Yeah, I would also go with what the majority seems to go with, which is either option 5 or option 6. I am not sure why option 4 is not just included within option 6. It seems to me that 4 really should be part and parcel of option 6. We do want to review impact on BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, and some of the other subsets of communities that have expressed their voices regarding the harms that they genuinely feel happen to them. So I don't see that as an option that we have not to do. We have to do, I think, include that. So that should be just part of the changes, since number 6 is essentially taking over from number 2, which was keep with changes, which number 6 is also keep with changes. Number 4 is just a list of changes. I like number 5 because it's still number 5 and 6 because they still keep to the genesis of the reasons for why SRO programs started to be implemented all over schools, which was school shootings. So both 5 and 6 keep the option for doing whatever it takes to have the safety component in place in case of something really catastrophic. In terms of number 6, I definitely, I don't see the purpose of the disarm CRO option, because once you do that, then the position becomes almost equivalent to any other positions up to a point at the school. So if there is something really catastrophic, like a school shooting, I think an armed officer on location is what would be different from all the other staff positions. So, yep, 5 and 6 for me. I do want to, again, reemphasize part of why I think number 4 should be within number 6 is its emphasis on the duties that require extensive training, social work, health professional, mental health professionals, and all of that. Those are quite extensive responsibilities that require a lot of training and certification. And there is a question to be had as to whether that is the primary purpose of the police force. So is a primary purpose to be health professionals or social workers. I don't see it that way. So I do think that if there are gaps in mental health or social work at our school, we do need to fill those gaps with the people most trained for that and for whom that is the primary purpose for being at the school.
Thanks, Martin. Okay, I think I did everyone on the committee. wave at me if I missed you. I think that was all 11 of you. And thanks so much for doing that round. So it's good to just do a further, check in to see where people are centering. And so I have two proposals for you. The first, it's a little bit of the revealing of my madness around, proposal 4, was that it seemed like that might be a jumping off point for at least getting some movement towards agreement. So I'm going to put to you the question of, so number 4 as it's written, and someone can make, could say 3 out of the 4 or all 4, but I'm going to propose all 4 items for now. Knowing that the district is moving and advancing some of this already, but to just sort of affirm that this be woven in, and that the committee would basically say we support the work thus far in these areas and encourage the district to keep going, basically. And so those 4 items again were under proposal 4, assign and adequately resource duties related to student services. So that's mental health and restorative justice, the work social workers, et cetera, do. Further examine the impact of SROs with impacted individuals in those areas that we know exist. The third, do analysis of the students' needs related to mental health and behavior needs, knowing again that this is happening to some extent, and continue use of or expand the use of therapy dogs. I'm going to ask if folks are willing to do a straw poll on this to see if folks are supportive of affirming what the district's doing already. Because I'm trying to get you to a place of like, we're moving towards, we're stacking our agreements, we're getting somewhere. So I'm going to pose that as a question. So are folks supportive of pulling in proposal 4 as the first set of recommendations, knowing that it'd be aligning with what the school district is already doing? So are people clear on the question? We're doing a straw poll to see if you support, you have questions still, or you oppose adding number 4. And Alexis, I see your hand. So yep, question, clarification?
Can I make a minor recommendation? Can we add staff? So can we say do an analysis of the student and staff needs of the district? Because the SRO program impacts staff as well.
Sure, we can certainly do that. This is any further clarifications or modifications in that first proposal, proposal 4. Yep, Shannon. I almost forgot your name for a second, Shannon. Okay. Where's my brain? Go for it. Yeah.
So are we looking, Emma, at adding 4 as a separate, as its own individual proposal, or is this going to be in addition to one of the other, like 5 and 6?
We're going to get to 5 and 6 and the other pieces. So think about it as stacking ideas. So we're doing our first set of ideas, and the end of this is going to be, as I said, sort of, I hate Frankenstein analogy here, but like it's going to be pieces of various pieces. So I wanted to see first test this one where I think there was easier agreement, and then get into the next phase of proposals to see where people are at. Okay. Certainly not the end. Yes, George.
I wasn't sure if I heard the wording the right way. So the third bullet down under number 4, in saying, do an analysis of the student needs of the district, and we might include student and staff needs of the district. Did I hear somebody add in the words about the SRO, or was this other than SRO and looking in at Maple Run, student and staff, just general mental health behavioral needs? So with SRO in there, or?
Yep. So I heard the modification right now as I could put it back up on the screen here, but modification from Alexis was to add to the third bullet, which is the student and staff needs related to mental health and behavior needs.
Okay.
There is a second bullet that's specific to the SRO program and the impact, but that is focused on students as it is written right now. Certainly open to modifications. You got it. Okay. So the proposal before you for the first round of straw polling is to pull in the ideas in proposal 4 into again, we're stacking it into your recommendations with this minor amendment to the third bullet that would add and staff needs. So if you're ready, for the question? I'm gonna get all formal now. Okay, so thumbs up says yes, I'm in agreement. We're gonna do the 2/3 again. So I need 8 votes to pass this first set of recommendations forward. So thumbs up if you agree, sideways if you have still some questions and you want to talk about them, and a vote no is a vote no, which is a thumbs down. So can I see your thumbs? Thumbs up if yes, some thumbs sideways if you still got questions, thumbs down if you disagree. Okay, I see everyone in agreement. Okay, great. All right, we've stacked our first sets of agreements. Well done, y'all. See, we can do this. All right. So let's move on to now trickier work. So I heard from most folks, this was not the formal poll though, and vote, that most folks were dancing either on proposal number 5, which was the liaison idea, or proposal number 6, which was sort of the revamped version of proposal 2 last time, or somewhere in between. And before we get into that, I thought what would be a good pass would be a discussion about duties and starting to get a little bit clear on duties, because I think building that will get you more clarity on what it is, meaning like, is it a liaison, or is it a formal SRO, and a little bit about titles. I think if we get into duties, that will also get the definition piece, which a lot of you were eager for. So I thought by starting there first, if that's okay, I thought we would start first by talking about safety and what folks mean by safety, because that's come up a lot. And I think that might be a first good foundational piece around the duties of safety for the campus and what would that mean. So I wonder if anyone out there wants to, I could certainly phrase something around safety, but I wonder if someone wants to kind of propose a duty related to safety and then see where people are at with that role. Knowing that we're going to get to the part of like the how, meaning people in the building, people not in the building, etc. But let's first focus on duties. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, so does someone want to offer something about what would be a safety duty that you would like to propose out to your colleagues here to weigh in on? Shannon?
So safety duties for me would mean traffic control in the morning. The students that are crossing. I mean, I know that there's a lot of teachers and staff outside in the morning as well, but it is an extra layer to be able to help with traffic duties as well. And then, you want more than one, Emma, or do you want to just start with one?
Let's start with that. I mean,
Okay.
this might get really detailed, but I think we're going to try to do these pretty quickly just to get some clarity if we need to like focus in a different place on safety. So Shannon has proposed safety in regards to the physical safety and drop-off pickup traffic related. Okay, so discussion, thoughts on that piece. Being a duty of the liaison or SRO, that title to be TBD, but that piece. Kathy?
I think to respond to safety concerns that the administration has, and to advise on safety protocols or practices at the school buildings.
So Kathy, would you like to revise that so that it is zoomed out a little bit where it's the safe? Are you revising, or are you adding a new idea to what Shannon's saying? Can you just
Oh, I'm
clarify?
sorry. That was I was throwing in another duty. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, one way that could be heard though, if you leave it up to administration, each of the administrations, meaning the principals or whoever is considered administration per campus, they could define the safety needs of the campus. And that could be the piece where it's clearly the safety needs of the campus. And if it's traffic at one campus, but not on the other, it leaves it up to the discretion of the administration, or you all could get more specific if you really want to get in the weeds. I would encourage us to remember that we could be here all night if we get too much in the weeds. So there is a dance we need to do around what's clear enough around your charge around safety that you feel like you all could, get to some level of agreement. George, did you want to weigh in? Oh, sorry, Kathy?
No,
Kathy
I
and then
said
George?
I think that could probably be, yeah, I'm not sure. I was just sort of thinking in terms of their, I guess in terms of the police or the public safety experts. So if there are things that the administration could be doing to ensure safety, that they have the information they need. But I mean, I suppose it could be different at each school. I guess it's different at each school now. So yeah, I wasn't trying to get too far into the weeds, sorry.
Okay, that's fine, Kathy. No apologies. George, and I think I saw Martin's hand afterward.
Yeah, and I just wanted to put out there just the example, and I don't know if that's too much to do that. So I'll try to be like real quick and concise. But even in terms of like the drop off, time frame that was mentioned, the realistic issues that have come up before, not every day, but they come up, and their public safety issues include somebody under the influence, or if there's a restraining order of some variety and someone's trying to pick up a child. Those are true. Those have happened. And so in my mind, to hear that, I know that's a reality that, in that case, the on-site person has been able to support. And someone else had made a comment earlier in the night that, wow, some of these issues are actually legal issues. And that certainly comes up even on the school campuses. So that's all I wanted to put out, and I'll stop there. Thanks.
So for the legal issues, let's try to focus on like campus safety and then come back to the legal issues, because I don't mean to splice them too much, but I think that is a good point of clarification. Martin?
So I think in terms of safety, I would hone in on the what it is that a police officer brings to the table that no one else on campus is able to do. And so we're talking about the highly specialized and extensive experience, highly specialized training that a police officer has. And so we're talking about things like helping the schools develop safety plans, best practices, and also dealing with the things, the catastrophic events, like, God forbid, school shootings or some other violent event brought on from an outsider, which I guess could trickle down to the job of traffic control.
Thanks, Martin. I have a proposal which I'm going to throw out to see if we can kind of hone in on the safety portion and just see if this is ready for straw polling, and then we'll go on to the legal issue piece of it. So I'm modifying a little bit with what was on proposal 6 if you're trying to follow along from home here. So under the modified and clarified duties, we would change the wording a little bit here, but it would be the duty would be physical safety duties for campus from external threats, conduct safety reviews with school officials, which would be that piece that Martin was just talking about, safety plans, and I know there's like a safety committee, I think, somewhere, and other campus safety matters. Is that starting to get us closer to, without getting too far into the weeds? I just worry if we get into kind of, no offense, Shannon, but traffic specific stuff that we might be here a long time. But okay, so I'm going to repeat that. And Shannon, go ahead, and while I rewrite this last piece, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things when you said from external threats, I think it needs to be internal as well, because somebody could have something inside school, a weapon or something like that. It can't just be external threats. Somebody could be having a bad day and they're already in the school. So I don't think it could be just external threats.
Okay, got it. All right, so I'm going to read it back to you all to see if this is ready for a poll. So one duty would be physical safety duties from internal and external threats, conduct safety reviews with school officials, and general campus safety. What am I missing? Alexis?
Just kind of thinking out loud, I'm wondering if that adequately captures mental health crisis, like significant mental health crisis that goes beyond a mental health professional. I'm thinking of a specific scenario of suicide, where a student may need to be, physical intervention may need to happen to prevent a student from harming themselves or others. That's outside of the realm of a counselor or a homeschool coordinator. That is where we would have law enforcement help us.
Would it be something like a student crisis situation? I'm so not a social worker, but would that get a little bit into there if we added a piece in here to assist with student crisis incidents? I don't know if that's the right wording.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be mindful that we're really talking about those most significant level of risk. I just know that there have been scenarios where, even calling the outside crisis, mobile crisis, we have to pull in police. So I just want to be clear that I'm trying to differentiate between just a rough patch for a student or dysregulation, and this is a really significant risk of harm with clear intention and plan towards self or others. I just want to make sure the mental health is captured therapeutically.
Yep. Okay. Martin, I think I saw your hand.
That's a good point, Alexis. I do feel that still does fall under physical safety. So maybe what we could add is, so we have external, internal threats to physical safety, but an additional thing would be self-harm, which would fall under physical safety.
Okay. I have a phrase I was trying to draft here, which I think gets both of those, which would be among the the three ideas we've had so far, would be another physical safety duty would be when there's a significant student crisis where there's a risk of self-harm. And we also won't be able to necessarily wordsmith tonight, but if we get the concept, and then part of what I'm going to email out to you is like, you can help me with a word or two, because I think we're getting close. Alexis, is there anything you want to just clarify if that wasn't hitting it?
Yeah, I think wordsmithing is important. It goes beyond, it's not any self-harm.
Okay.
I'm really talking about the highest level of risk.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to have this as draft, and knowing that I think everyone understands about, changing a word here or two to make sure we say what we mean. If I'm going to read it back and see if we're close enough, if we're putting a pin in this one and taking a vote, and then moving on to the legal issue question. So the first duty would be physical safety duties from internal and external threats, conduct safety reviews with school officials, support, I have to get a verb in here, but support student crisis incidents of the highest level of risk, and general campus safety. Is that close enough for us? Bob, and then Martin?
Maybe just to add to the safety review sounds more reactive. If we also added the word safety planning, review and planning, then the planning is a proactive portion.
I don't know if we've,
Bob?
I don't know if we talked about it, but conduct criminal investigations has not been mentioned. Should that stay in there?
We're going to get to legal issues in just a second. We're trying to stick to the safety campus, the physical safety campus piece, and then we'll get to legal issues in just a minute, which I think that could fall under. Okay. Bob. Can you hold it just for one moment? Okay. All right. I'm going to read back one more time. Oh, Kathy. Yep. And then I'm going to call the question to keep us moving. Okay.
I'm not 100% sure that this is part of public safety, but I think it relates to it in terms of, and it kind of brings in a communication and coordination aspect, which I think is an important part of it. The communication, the coordination between the school and the police department, and just, it's a very specific scenario, but I think it relates to public safety, and that I guess there was an incident, trying to remember the date. I think it was sometime back in it was at some point before there was an SRO program at either of the elementary schools, and there was an active shooter threat somewhere in the town, and the police were aware of it, but they were not aware that one of the elementary schools was on a field trip, and it brought them in the path of where the active shooter threat was happening. So it relates to public safety, but I think it might be this other, I wanted to bring it up during this discussion, just in case we wanted to include something that would encompass that. But I think you
Okay.
could have, communication and coordination to cover a lot of different scenarios. So
Okay.
I'm flexible on where that goes, but
So maybe even at the beginning of physical safety and coordination / communication, and then the rest of our list from there, because I'm sure coordination and communication applies to everything we've sort of talked about.
sure.
All right, so here's my next pass, and hopefully we are at a point where we could call the question. So bear with me. So here's the proposal to you. So one duty would be physical safety and coordination and communication regarding internal and external threats, conduct safety reviews and plans with school officials, support student crisis incidences of the highest level of risk, and other general campus safety. That's not the most beautifully worded thing, but the ideas are there. Are we ready for the question? So thumbs up indicates that you are in support of adding this duty to, we're just going to call it the position for now, or the program, the thing. Adding this position. Thumbs down is voting no, and the thumb sideways means I have something else to say. Okay, so I'm going to ask for the vote. So show me your thumbs. Thumbs up if you're ready to move that idea forward. Thumb sideways, you got concerns. Thumbs down is fine. We need 8 to pass the item. Okay, so I see thumbs up from everyone. John, would you like to pass on this vote or say more?
No, I'm pass on this one for now, but
Okay, yep, that's fair enough.
yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
okay, yep. Okay, so let's now go to the legal piece that we were just starting to talk about. So Bob, you can certainly jump in. The other ideas that we've heard were beyond in criminal investigations were the drug and alcohol use on campus. So these are there was a restraining order mentioned, et cetera. So let's now start in that area. Bob, do you want to kick us off what you had in mind?
I know there's certain things that have to be done. I'm not sure what they are. And I just want to make sure that it's, understood that officers have to follow up on certain items. There's not a choice. I'm not sure exactly what they are. I don't know. It's an act. It might be Act 56. I'm sure Lieutenant Talley can tell us, but I'd like to see something in there and other things as required by law, because there are things that officers have to investigate. They have to follow up on.
Okay, so in general, what is required by law related to schools, Bob, specifically?
I don't know. I know, again, like I said, I'm going to have to defer to somebody else, but I know there's things in there. If a police officer is brought, if something's brought to his or her attention, they have to follow up on that. And
So I mean,
I don't know how to word that, but I just want to make sure that's in there, that people know that there are certain things that have to be followed up on.
well, mandated is usually the school
Right,
word. So yeah, legally mandated items. Okay,
Right.
it looks like Lieutenant Talley has mentioned Act 56 is the Vermont police reform that requires certain things, such as wearing cameras and investigating crimes. And I believe that's probably for all police officers, not specific
Right.
to SROs, I imagine. Okay, thank you. He affirmed yes. Okay, so other things to throw out there around legal issues you would like to see or not see related to these duties. John?
Yeah, I kind of I jumping off from what Bob said, I think we may be able to save ourselves a little time here, just in terms of understanding that, when the school develops a relationship with law enforcement, whatever we call it, whatever the nature of it is, that person is still a police officer and will, be a police officer and have to do all the duties that a police officer normally would. I think that understanding would be clear, so we don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel, to use a cliche.
Thanks, John. Let me ask for a point of clarity, because around drug and alcohol use on campus, that has been something in one way, shape, or form the SRO position has included. There are plenty of times where drug and alcohol use are used, but police are not called necessarily. How do folks feel about adding that to the the legal duties for this position to be in charge of are not on campus. And Shannon, can I pass you? I have to go grab my wall charger for my computer. Can I pass you the facilitation? I'm still listening. I'm hearing you all, but I'll just be right back while I grab that. So anyone have that reaction? How should you all address the drug and alcohol use on campus here or not?
Go ahead, Martin.
I did want to echo what John said. I think we can't save ourselves some time, because if it is legally mandated, it's not a choice we have. So whether or not we include it, it doesn't matter. It's there. So I think that's kind of not necessary to discuss it, since we don't have a choice on it. In terms of drug use and all of that, I think that extends beyond just legal issues. Obviously, there's treatment, there's there's other things related to mental health options that are out there beyond the legal.
So Martin, would you add drug and alcohol? I don't know what the verb here is, monitoring, enforcement, etc., to this list of duties or not?
To the extent that those duties are not an option because they're legally mandated, I think it's therefore it's moot to add or not add. It's there. I wouldn't add it because I am apprehensive of making the impression of encouraging such societal problems that extend beyond simply you're breaking the law, making it look like we're automatically pushing people towards legal consequence. And maybe there are other options that need to be tried first. So I wouldn't add it. When it does reach the SRO or the officer, they are mandated to follow up on it, whether or not we wordcraft here.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, Martin. So I'm hearing that the suggestion here is that the legal issues be worded in such a way that says what is required by a law or what is legally mandated for a police officer to act upon. That's, again, not the most beautifully written thing, but that is what I'm hearing in terms of what we perhaps should write for or add for the duty on legal issues. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can do a poll on that one. So if we do that in terms of what is legally mandated and required of a police officer in their normal duties, if that's the proposal, does everyone understand the proposal question? Okay, if so, I see thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down on adding that one to the list. Okay, great, thank you. All right, moving along, y'all. Okay, so the next ones that were on this sort of rows to the top, and we don't have to get super in the details for beyond this, but I do think it would be useful to see if you want to weigh in specifically on online bullying. That was something that's been brought up a few times from folks, or whether we want to be specific. We can also at this point put a pin in it and do no more duties, but I want to just see if there's other duties you all feel compelled to put forward. I put that one out, and then after that, I'm going to see if anyone has any additional ones that you feel we should add before we move on to other items. But Connor, yep, online bullying, what y'all think?
I actually did want to note that. I just want to note that I unfortunately do have to get going right now. Very, very sorry. But I wish you guys good luck in coming to consensus. And sorry again that I can't be here for the whole time.
That's fine, Connor. We will be emailing out sort of the draft so everyone sees the wording and where we tentatively get at the end. So you'll see what's coming next. Thanks so much for all your hard work. Thanks, Connor.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks. All right, y'all, to the online bullying. Is that something you want to add to this list or not? Sarah?
I think everyone knows my position on that at this point, but yes, I would like to add it. I think especially on strategies, just communication, around the law. I mean, in the state of Vermont, cyberbullying is listed as a criminal behavior. So I think that it should be included.
So Sarah, how would you put this as a duty? Be consulted on or take the lead on? Like, can we get a little bit clear about what, just as a jumping off point, not to put you all on the spot, but
Yeah. No, I like the consultation phrase, and just working with schools and either counselors or other professionals in the field that can help with this pertinent issue.
Okay. Other responses, George?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about a couple of instances, and I know it certainly extends to online bullying, but there's a piece of it where I know that in the past our SRO on into our guidance counselors, and even including like our librarians from their curricula there, they're doing some of that, like mentoring / training in general online safety and security. So I'm not sure if we'd want to recommend that kind of that partnership, or those like, all hands on deck to try to mitigate problems that kids might experience or find themselves in, that would extend to some type of SRO as it has in the past. I'm just finding myself thinking there's the bullying piece, and then there's this general security and safety that goes along with operating as a young person in the world today.
So I'm going to suggest a modified so we can see if this, just testing again. So consult on online safety and bullying incidences with staff and other professionals with relevant expertise is a working draft here. Okay. Other reactions or refinements? Martin, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I think it seems odd that if it's playground bullying, there's no special wording for it that sends it automatically to the police officer. But if it's online bullying, automatically we want to include maybe language that would send it to a place where they're mandated to take certain actions that might be permanent on the child's record. So, and we do know there's training on all kinds of fronts at school in trying to help students students with developing brains, and trying to develop as citizens of our community. So we have, digital citizenship. We have all kinds of professionals who work with this. So I mean, if it eventually, if those professionals deem that, this should go be legally dealt with, then yeah, but I don't see why we should write it down uniquely and exclude other types of bullying, and give those other types of bullying options for other intermediary interventions, but not cyber.
So Martin, are you suggesting a revision here, or dropping it all together and being silent on this online bullying concept and online safety?
Dropping.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
Just a clarifying question. If we say consultation and we don't recommend that, are we saying that they wouldn't be consulted on that issue?
Well, part of what we're trying to do is get more specific, I think. Generally, that was a theme around better specificity about what this program is and isn't for all involved. And this, I think we want to say what you mean. Ideally, we may not get through the whole list, but I think you want to be super clear about what you do want this program to do and what you do not want this program to do. So I'm hoping that we don't leave any vague areas. And we have to do justifications, of course, too, as we go through this. Sarah, yep.
And I don't know if this is the time to get into the weeds about it. I think that you know, when there is online bullying, the school still needs to do their piece to see what the impact is for students day to day at their schools. That's the responsibility of schools, as it is if there's playground behavior that's hurtful and determined as bullying behavior. I think that the difficult aspect with online is sometimes it's about removal of pictures, you know, things that are happening where it becomes very difficult as a school to navigate, you know, devices that are owned at home and things of that nature. So I think the consultation part is less about creating a record and more about figuring out how to provide safety.
Okay. Bob, and then I'm going to see if we can revise this one to a place where we can take a vote and move on. So Bob, last thought on this?
Maybe I'm reading this a little different. I'm reading it as more of a educational aspect and a prevention aspect than a legal response. Do we want the officers to be part of the education and prevention? You know, they can tell what the legal ramifications are. That could be part of the educational process, but that's the way I'm reading this, as opposed to legal.
Okay, Martin, do you have a suggestion of rewording? Because I want to get us to a place where we can.
I would emphasize what Bob said. I see the usefulness of SROs bringing the seriousness of such activities to the attention of students in a proactive manner.
If we were to change this to an education consultation for education purposes, would that change anyone's opinion on this one way or the other? Where it would read consult on online safety and online bullying education with staff and other professionals with relevant expertise. So rather than being reactive to an incident, it would be more of an orientation towards education. So in partnership with staff. And consult, we can change that, but consult would be, they're not the lead on, but they get consulted in that partnership with other relevant staff. Any reactions to that, one way or the other? I see nods. Okay, Alexis, and then I think we might take a poll on this. Alexis?
I think Sarah, I definitely do not want to speak for you, but I think what Sarah is trying to articulate is there are situations with online bullying where we have to pull in law enforcement because it crosses the line just from standard bullying and it becomes a legal issue. So I definitely hear the proactive educational side of it, but I don't think the proactive educational side can completely replace the legal part of online matters that are happening with students.
Right, and let's remember, we just put into the duties all mandated required legal mandated duties. I'm tripping over my own words here, but and so that is, we do know there's state law that does criminalize certain practices on bullying online. So there it is, and there is a legal definition of bullying in that statute as well, just so we're clear. And just to be super clear, I know schools have the policy, the HHB or whatever it's called, the acronym for, you know, hazing and harassment and bullying. So there is a pretty defined definition, and where that's what we're talking about, right? Just so that we're saying what we mean. The hazing, harassment, bullying definition per school policy, state law. Yes, that's what we mean by this bullying. Okay, all right, ready for a poll? Here we go. So the third duty that we're testing here to see if folks are supportive would be for this position to consult on online safety and online bullying education with staff and other relevant professionals or professionals of relevant expertise. And by bullying, that is defined by school policy. What is it, Alexis? HHB? Is that the acronym? The y'all know what I mean, right? HHB definition. Okay, so that's the poll to you. So if you're in support of adding that duty, again, it's shifted now towards education and in a consultation kind of mode for online safety and online bullying. Thumbs up if you're in agreement of adding that. Thumbs sideways if you have something else still to say. Thumbs down if you disagree about adding that duty. Okay, I'm seeing Thumbs up if they are sideways. I see a couple people choosing not to vote, which is okay. I see some sideways. Okay. So a little bit more discussion on this, or should we table this and say this is an area for further exploration that the board needs to do? Because that is another option here, which I think we're going to have to start moving to just to get us into a couple more areas. Okay. So I'm gonna suggest that that be the recommendation on this one, that there was some not clear consensus on, not that we're working towards consensus to be clear, but this is an area that needs to be further exploration. This is as far as you all got in discussion without agreement, but this is a question now that you're putting to the board, not a firm recommendation. Are you okay with that as a step forward on this piece? Thumbs up if you're okay with proceeding on that way, that this is a question you'd like the board to explore more. We only got so far in that part of the conversation. Okay. We have more to go. That's why I'm suggesting we table this as a question, because we're not going to get to the other pieces here if we stay in this space. Okay. All right. I don't see people blocking, not everyone's voting, but I'm gonna move us forward. Okay, here we go. So before we move off duties, what else? I'm turning it over to you. What else do you feel compelled must be on the list or must not be on the list before we try to move into a couple other pieces around what this program looks like and how it gets done? Shannon. And then George.
I like the aligning the training requirements with the SRO and the existing staff and with the district. I think that needs to be a big piece of it, because I think that they need to work together. If that is what we're moving towards, you know, it has to be everybody has to be on the same page and to know what, you know, what the requirements, what the training is, and just that needs to be a piece of it.
Okay. I think this one might be, I'm going to take this right to a poll because I think there was some agreement. It was a blue one, whatever my color coding was. So I'm going to put this up to a poll to see if we're ready for just a quicker answer on this. So it was one of the bullets under proposal 6, align training requirements, as Shannon was just reading, I believe, for SROs with existing staff district training, such as on bias and other mandated training areas that folks have. So if you're in agreement with adding that to our list of recommendations, can I see a thumbs up? If you have further concerns, sideways, thumbs down, just to see if we can get to 8 on this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the majority of you did vote yes for that, 2/3, over 2/3, I should say. So we're going to add that to the list. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, other duties and specific to duties. So the other things that are on that list were mentorship, the LEAD program, maybe it's the lead program, student behavior responses, home visits, any of that people feel compelled to make sure is on that list or not on that list. This would be the time to kind of add that into the conversation. John?
Yeah, I would say that adding a provision for a optional mentorship program would be useful.
Okay, so meaning that this program, as part of its charge, would have an optional mentorship program. Do you want to say a little bit more about that? Just what that means?
Yeah,
to you?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, one of the things that did stand out to me in the meeting with the resource officers was some of the mentoring relationships that they've developed, and I think if we can generate a scenario where we can preserve that option for students who wish to pursue it, I think that would be positive.
Okay, I see some nods. Are there any changes to that proposal that people would like to make? So if we're getting nods, we can go with nods. Okay, so the proposal to put to you is that an optional mentorship program with students would be an aspect of this set of recommendations for the program. Okay, so George, yep.
All right, just quickly, I'm just trying to think of how there might be like different perspectives or thoughts about that one. Instances I'm aware of, which doesn't represent everything, that's totally fine. But in that being kind of an optional thing, it's done in conjunction with, you know, the school staff, that might extend to the counselors, that might extend to, you know, outside type counselors as well, just to try to arrive at a nice fit for certain students. So what I think I'm questioning or suggesting is if we might add that this isn't just the officer perhaps like declaring, I'm going to mentor you now as an option, but that it's done in concert with others from the schools who are aware of the child, perhaps the background, and really finding like a best fit mentor-mentee relationship there.
Okay, so how's this? Oh,
With you
sorry,
on that one,
John?
George. I definitely intended the option. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I
Nope.
was just saying I definitely intended the option to be the students.
So for a little bit of clarity, optional mentorship program with students in coordination with staff to determine when used. Again, not most beautiful language ever, but okay. So can I do a straw poll on that? Thumbs up if that feels like worthy to add to the list. Thumbs sideways if you need to pass, and or thumbs down to vote against. So I'm seeing most thumbs up. I have 8, so that is going to be added. Okay, thank you. All right, and John froze for a second, so I don't know if you voted or not, John, but you think we had at least 8, so we're going to move on. Okay, last call for other duties, on the list, off the list. Anything else you want to get specific about, George?
On the list where it says home visits, what I don't think I see it on there, but I'm curious about the connection between what I'm aware of for home visits being done in the past in support of truancy issues. In particular, knowing it was a relationship with, an officer in the school setting that supported a sufficient discussion when the officer visited a residence to really encourage the kid to make it to school. That I think that's different than other things we've said so far, and at least for the sake of discussion, I'd like to kind of see where we go with that.
Okay, other thoughts on the home visits truancy world? Alexis?
This is a duty where I don't feel we need law enforcement to encourage students to attend school. I think that can be done through more therapeutic positions and roles.
Okay, thank you. Martin?
While I don't think encouraging students to go to school might need an officer, I do think that home visits extend beyond maybe such responsibilities. For example, you could have home visits for safety check reasons, and also an officer might have other sources of information on a family that school staff could not possibly source, that would allow for a more productive, safer, safety check visit or something like that. So I actually think that home visits should be there, not for the sake of, hey, come to school, but within the scope of safety portfolio.
Okay, other thoughts on home visits and the truancy piece being a specific duty here, John?
I will echo Alexis on the encouraging student attendance. Probably not an area that would require law enforcement. But then also the broader piece about home visits, it seems like what Martin was getting at may fall under that kind of umbrella of performing regular law enforcement duties. If there is a situation where, there is a safety issue that extended, from school to the home or vice versa, where law enforcement was involved, that just may be a piece that falls in. So we may not need to get into that.
Okay. All right, so Shannon, and then I'm going to take a poll on this, just so we can try to use it best for 10 minutes.
I'm just wondering if we should just phrase it as, a consult with them regarding truancy and well visits, and or just a piece of, to kind of bundle it together. It's the same thing like, civic education and stuff if the school feels that they need the SRO to step in, with truancy issues, because that is a legal issue as well, I believe, like as far as students attending school. You know, that falls underneath the legal umbrella as well, but just kind of bundling it together. Does that make sense, Emma?
It can. I encourage you again to say what you mean, right? We don't want to leave areas of vagueness. We do have the first two duties, again, are very specific around being clear when there's a physical safety issue. That is when this position is activated and used for the specialty training for which this position has, as well as any mandated legal issues. So by default, in those scenarios, this position is being pulled in. I think if you get into like education roles and home visits and whatnot, I think you need to be really specific of what you really mean or not mean, because if you're really just saying in terms of when it's legally required, you've done that already. And I, you know, in all sorts of policy making, and I know you're making recommendations here, you want to be specific and not leave it too wide open if that's not your intention.
Okay. I think with as far as safety, I know that there's I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that, but like safety issues, there's been where police officers have been shot going and doing a wellness visit and stuff. So I think that is a big deal, and that needs to be included.
Okay, so you're suggesting, Shannon, that we do a specific thing around home visits, or did you feel like the safety trigger in the first duty we talked about is sufficient? Just want to clarify.
I don't know, to be honest. That's
okay,
fair.
Okay, Martin. And then let's see if we can get to a question here.
I really like the phrasing that Shannon had, consultation regarding, you know, well visits and truancy. A concern that I have with just assuming that a home safety visit is a general application of police enforcement duties is that there's a big difference between a home visit by an officer who knows the student, has a relationship with the student, has some information on the family, versus an officer doing a visit to a home who might not have that extra connection and information. I think the one is safer and more likely to come out with positive outcomes than the other.
Okay, so I'm going to pose a question, which I think might be a question that folks can weigh in on. I think that it gets with folks who want this on here. So a consultation on home visits and well visits when necessary. Again, not the most beautiful thing in the world, but that is the question to you. Knowing we have the other items already, right? This isn't in isolation, we have the other items. So vote yes if you'd like to add consultation on home visits and well visits when necessary. Thumbs up if you want to add that. Thumbs sideways if you're not interested. Sorry, if you have some more concerns. Thumbs down, no for any reason. You know, no to that. You feel like the other parts cover it, whatever that might be. So really want to just encourage people to be willing to say what you mean. So thumbs up if you want to support that phrase. Adding, thumbs down if you are opposed, thumbs sideways if you have more to say. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I only have 3 thumbs up, so I'm going to suggest that this get tabled, that it doesn't get added specifically, that we can do the question thing again for more exploration, because we did do some, you know, deliberation on that, but it's not making the list as of right now. Okay. So it is 6:54 on my computer here. I want to pause on the duties and see if there's a couple other easier ones that there was some blue around, and then also see if we can shift gears into the areas where you would feel the board should do more exploration on, because I'm not sure we're going to be able to do the more exploration on, and see if we can get that into sort of our set of recommendations. The 2 areas that I thought might be ones that there's easier agreement to, it may not, would be around increasing and improving communication and education to students and families and staff on the role. I heard a lot of generally people leaning that way. I wonder if that is something people are okay to pose as a question. So this would be not education like them in classrooms, this role in classrooms, but education about what this role is in the school, in whatever capacity it's showing up. So any reactions to that before putting that to a question to you all? I always see a thumbs already. Oh, all right, people ready to vote. Okay, so that's okay, we can do that. We can go there. Thumbs up if you'd like to add increase and improve communication education on the role to students, current families, etc. Thumbs up if you're in agreement to add that one. All right. Okay. All right. So I saw enough yeses on that. Okay. All right. The other one I wanted to offer as maybe an easier one would be the piece about annual reporting of program goals, performance, and data collection. That was another one that I was generally seeing some more moving towards agreement on that. We might want to just define a little bit what data collection is if we just have a minute, if people had a specific suggestion or not there. But this did come up in your research and deliberations where there were data gaps in terms of what was being collected consistently year to year to be able to, as in all programs, be able to evaluate and have pertinent information. But does anyone have any general responses to adding some sort of annual reporting of program goals, performance, and data collection? Alexis?
My only question would be, is annual enough?
Can you tell me a little bit more what that means?
I'm just wondering if the board and community would want more frequent reporting of performance and data collection than once a year.
Okay. Do you have a suggestion, like quarterly, every 6 months? Do you want to get a little more specific?
I don't. I'm wondering if that's something that the board dives deeper into.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Okay. John?
I'd maybe specify in that to say to list, gosh, I'm struggling with how to say it. To track the outcomes of student interactions. That might be good data to have available.
Okay. I'm going to read back what I have so far here. Require annual reporting of goals, program performance, and data collection, such as tracking student interactions, with a recommendation that the board look at if this timing is the right timing. Again, not the most beautifully worded thing. And that would be a recommendation to put to the board. So there's a bit of the board to look a little bit more at timing, but there'd be some reporting of the goals, program performance, and data collection. One idea is being specifically tracking student interactions with the role. Ready for the question? Yes to adding that. Sideways if you still have concerns, down if you want to vote no. I know we're moving fast here, but I'm hoping that this, okay, so I'm seeing, okay, all right, okay. All right, oh, well, the sideways, that's okay. You can do sideways, you can do down, it's okay. Okay, all right, so that's where I thought we would have ease of getting a few more pieces in there based on some other recommendations. Did I miss any other ones that were easeful before we go to the list of unresolved questions that we think would be worth posing that you all did not have time to deliberate on? Is there any other one that you think would, based on hearing all of our discussions collectively, that would be an obvious one that most of you would agree to, if not all, that should be added before we go to questions? Low-hanging fruit, as we say. Okay, not seeing any. So we had a couple of big ones that we do not have time to get into. If you were all granted an extension and wanted to continue on, I think it would take a few more. Some of these are big ones, like arming the role or not, how many SROs or whatever the position's name is or not. We did not have time to get to those. So I'm wondering if what you see on the remaining list here on proposal 6, which would be including the number of staff needed for this role at schools, the arming of the position, the clothing these folks wear or not. Those are kind of 3 big ones. Do people feel comfortable listing that as areas you did not have time to deliberate on, but would encourage the board to consider, or would you like to be silent on those topics? Mike?
I propose this to the committee here. I don't know if things have changed regarding what we think about that since the beginning of this meeting, now that we're sort of defining this role now. So maybe people who were against having an armed officer or maybe now for it because we're limiting that role some. So I propose that to the committee. Maybe it's something we can take a vote on, or maybe we're not ready. I don't know.
I think we're out of the time for voting, to be honest, because I think we want to make sure we're not, I'm already feeling we're rushing those questions. People can disagree, but I think we're moving more towards what would you recommend the board's ultimately going to make these decisions, as we know, right? So what specifically, if you're going to make them an agenda to continue your work, what areas would you like them to deliberate on further in order to make sure that this is a thorough enough, program redesign and hit all the marks that you would like somebody to make a decision about? Alexis?
The FTE status, I would like the board to dive deeper into that based on the updated roles we're recommending. Do we need 3 full-time SROs in Maple Run?
Okay. So that's one proposal. How do people feel about that? Adding that as a question. It's not a recommendation, but it's a recommendation to explore that further without a position. Thumbs up to add that, to look at if the FTE staffing is the right one. It's a question, not a recommendation. Thumbs up. I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Couple haven't quite come to a position on that or not. Okay, I'm gonna put a pin in that one and see if we can get one more to come along or not, because we didn't quite have 8. Okay. Do you all want to pose the question of whether the positions are armed or not to the board? Or leave it silent? Leah?
I just had a question. When we're recommending it to the board, what exactly are they going to do with that? Like, how are they going to do anything with that recommendation?
Right. So we're now in a section, because we're at a time where we're simply adding questions that sort of your unfinished business. These would be topics you would encourage the board to talk about and deliberate on. And we could, phrase the question. For example, the last one is would be, if you wanted to add it, would be determine what FTE staffing, that's the staffing levels, are necessary to meet the duties as recommended. Right, that would be an open-ended question for them to answer without a position by the committee. And this one would be explore whether or not the position is required to be armed or should be armed, for that matter. We would word it in such a way that the committee does not have a position, but it is a topic that you feel important enough that you would like the board to discuss further. Is that clear?
Yeah, so they would be doing their own research on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or you would say, we would specifically like you not only to discuss and do research. If you wanted to be that specific, you could certainly do that. Kathy?
So just to be clear, we've been stacking these different agreements. So we're not, as it stands right now, are we saying that the majority of the committee supports numbers 5 and 6? 5 or 6 with the agreements from number 4 included, and then I think I lost the big picture somewhere and getting.
Yeah, I'm happy to recap. Yep, I'm happy to recap. We didn't quite get to the place of what the label is, liaison or SRO. We didn't also not get to, placement of these individuals in school, out of school, et cetera. Not to use the Burlington model, but Burlington, for example, has a liaison, which is a police officer, but is not located at school. So we weren't able to get there. What we were able to get to was the items in proposal 4. There were 4 items with a slight revision of adding staff. We also added a handful of duties around physical safety, legal mandated required issues, aligning training with staff, optional mentorship program, and an annual reporting piece. Those were all definite recommendations. And then there were 2 question areas where we would like the board to look further into the online bullying aspect with some clarity of what that is, as well as the home visits and well visits thing. And I missed one as well. Improving and increasing the communication was also a yes recommendation from the committee. It is a really very fast review of what we've stacked in terms of
Right.
what you are advancing. Yep.
Okay, and so after this meeting tonight, it's going to be you and the chairs, or you kind of putting everything together into a proposal, and then we get to look at it, and then it goes to the school board, and then we get to
Correct.
sort of okay. So
Yep.
there were some pieces in there from the original approach that we were taking in terms of the 2/3, you know, the 2/3 majority, and then the dissenting opinions and things like that. Are we all writing?
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering what, you know, what our work is after we,
Yep.
you know, get done with this
Yep,
discussion tonight,
exactly. Yep.
before it
And
goes
I
to the
was
board.
definitely totally. And I was going to do that right after we did, if there were any kind of final pieces
Okay.
on questions you would like to add. I'm absolutely going there.
Okay.
Trust me, I'm going to beg 5 minutes to
No
make sure
problem.
that's clear so you all know.
Okay.
Yeah. So with these questions, I know we're now in borrowed time here. So what are the areas, if any, you would like the board to consider further, knowing that we could not get to a place of a recommendation? There was just not enough time, which is okay. We've all done a lot of work here. So the options here were around staffing, the arming or not arming of the position, the uniform piece, anything there, or anything in addition that you have in your mind that you think the board should be asked to think on further. John?
I think the board should examine where the position is located, being on school campus or elsewhere. Yeah, that's the only one I'm articulating at the moment.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Let me.
Yeah, and just to
Kathy,
sort
do
of,
you?
oh, sorry.
Yep.
And just to
No, go for it.
piggyback off of that is that some of my hesitation is just that I think that, you know, I think depending on what the answer is to that question would kind of answer the questions of arm, disarm. For example, if the decision was made that this position could exist at the police department and not have an all-day full week, you know, presence, that's what I'm looking for, presence
Yep.
in the schools, then the arm, disarm uniform might be moot points, or not.
Okay. Okay.
You know, so
well,
I think some of these are sort of interrelated, I guess is what I'm saying. And I don't know, we can,
of course.
yeah, if we can, yes, it's almost like we have to discuss one thing in order to discuss the others in a sense.
Right.
So
right. The sequencing is tricky on this one.
Yes.
Why the duties were
Absolutely.
important to talk about first, but then we couldn't have time to get to the whole thing. So let me pose that question to you all. Would you like to add a question for the board to talk through? Would be where the position is located on campus or not? Just a question, not a position, but that would you like the board to specifically address that question? Thumbs up if yes, thumbs sideways if you need more discussion, and thumbs down if no. 1, 2, 3. All right, I only got 5 thumbs up, so we are not going to advance that question. It's okay. This is where it's tricky. Okay, so right now I have no questions to advance to the board at this point. So the option here would be they will have all the documentation of, believe me, I've been already started to write the documentation part of all the stuff you've done up to this point, not the recommendations. They will have a lot of information. You've collected a lot of information. But it seems like we're not at the point where we can have consensus on the questions, or sorry, not consensus. I don't mean it by that. We don't have a 2/3 support of clarity on what questions we would like the board to examine beyond what you've been able to come up with tonight. And that's okay. So I'm going to pivot now, if this is okay, to summarizing where we're at and what the options, what last bits of work I'm asking for you all to do, and your options for making sure your voices are heard, because we did have some divisions here in the end, which is part of the process. Yep, George, before I do that, George.
With huge apologies, my signal's been in and out for probably the last 15 minutes, but did an idea come up, even if it's as a question to the board, about considering hiring practices or public input on hiring practices? I have no idea if I missed that.
We did not pose that question. We posed most everything else, but we didn't pose that one. Would you like me to poll that question, George?
Yes.
Okay, so the question is, it's a question. So we would like the board to examine the hiring practices and community involvement in those practices. That-
With an eye towards greater inclusion in the process.
Okay, with an eye towards greater inclusion towards the process. So that would be a question to the board to explore further. So the hiring practices for these positions with an eye towards community engagement and more, sorry, inclusivity. Is that right, George? Sorry, my brain just misfired there for a second. Okay, so thumbs up if you will want to agree to add that to as a question for the board to explore further. Thumbs sideways if you have, you know, questions or concerns. Thumbs down if you do not want to add that as a question for the board to consider. Hiring practices. We just need 8 to get there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, not 1, 2, 3, 5. All right, I'm only seeing 5, so that we will not advance that question. Okay, all right. So here we are, friends, at the end of our journey. So I will write up these recommendations, and I'm going to do a draft of both the wording, and then the board did ask for justifications. So I'm going to write like a brief where we were with the sort of summary of how you got to that recommendation for them. The rest of the report includes a whole boatload of other information, including all the resources gathered, summaries of all the group pieces, who provided public comment, etc. You're more than welcome to read the whole thing, but what I will ask for you to do specifically is read the recommendations. I will have that to you as soon as possible, but no later than Tuesday morning. It's due to the board on Friday, the 11th. So that leaves a few days for you to respond to and clarify if I got something totally wrong. And if it's minor wordsmithing, great, but I will ask if you do have something that wasn't accurate, that we do use the email list so that we get it accurate. And we'll make sure that that's publicly available to folks who are not going to be on the email list, because everything is public document. Hold on a second. Right then, my AirPods died. Can you hear me still? Yes? Okay. The screen share and the AirPods dying. So that is going to come to you by Tuesday morning, maybe sooner. So please read it. And if I don't hear anything from, it's going to come via email, then I'm going to consider that consent of what's in that document. I would prefer to hear from everyone. It just makes me nervous if you're actually totally silent, but please take that last bit of responsibility on. We have allowed folks to add a dissenting opinion. So if this feels compelling, that you feel, for example, that the board should explore 3 more questions, you can include that in your own personal statement. That is up to you to write and get to me by June 11th, so that that can be submitted as, you know, an addendum, if you will, to the report. I ask that you send it to me so I can package it all together, because the board has requested printed versions of this whole set of recommendations. So that is the timeline and that is the process. If we can talk offline if that's a challenge for anyone. Okay, so that's on the dissent piece. Let's see, just a quick reminder, there's going to be, and I will remind the subgroups, there's a couple small areas where I need a little bit more help just knowing which resources you would like the board to specifically focus in on based on what you used and any interviews you did with specific people that I missed, but you'll just look for that section. I'll clue you in on that in the report. Final recommendations on June 11th. The report, again, will be available to the public on June 16th per the direction from the school board, and we'll post it that night. Shannon, John, and myself will be going to the school board meeting. We welcome you all to join us, but the 3 of us will be in the leadership role of presenting and answering questions from the board. And I believe, unless I've missed something, that is where we're at. Any final questions? All right, friends. Well, what a journey. This was tricky work. It's never done. It's human beings are ever evolving, and you know the programs created by human beings should also be ever evolving to be responsive, right? So I really appreciate the work, the patience, the time you've all put into this unpaid job, how difficult it is, the courageous leadership of going there and putting your opinions out there in this space. I really also thank the community for engaging with this process as we built it. Yeah, and any final thoughts before we sign off? John?
Echoing those thank yous. Thank you, board members, for doing this together. Thank you, community, for showing up and being heard. Thank you, Emma, for guiding us through this, because as murky as it was, it would have been a whole lot murkier without your help. So deeply appreciative of that.
Thanks all. Okay. All right, with that, I'm going to stop recording. We'll do our chat download function. And thank you all so much again. Keep an eye on those inboxes. Okay, great. Have a good night. Thank you all.